It says we are live, so let me see. Where can I get the link to it though? I have to go to YouTube to find it. I don't see one.
Okay, I see it. I posted it in chat, and I'm going to tweet it out. You're going to be able to edit the beginning and end of this once it's up on YouTube.
Yep, I'm tweeting real quick.
Okay. We'll give it a few minutes for people to poke in.
Somebody already? Cool. Bobby.
What is up, Bobby? Are we going to still use Slack for sharing snippets, or do you want to just use the StreamYard chat? Whatever's easier for you.
I don't know. I've used it like chat, sharing code in Zoom has always been.
Yeah. Let's just stick with
not
Slack.
Good.
Fran, that goes for you too. Like if you have anything to say, just share it in Slack, because then we can use the syntax highlighting and it'll be easier to copy and paste stuff.
Yeah, we got a couple people. Cool. This is cool. All right. So thanks for joining. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties this morning, so we're trying to overcome that. We're gonna give it a couple more minutes, see if some more folks join, and then we'll jump in.
Hey, what's up, Stefano? I keep forgetting that I'm sharing my entire screen, and I'm like, I keep wanting to do other things. Just gotta sit and relax. I think we can probably get started though.
I see. So, all right. I'm gonna retweet just from my other account, and then we'll go.
Okay. What's up, Fran? See you in the chat. I knew you were there though.
We're live. Got a couple people with us, and everybody else will catch some recording. All right. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Basically, what we're doing today, Colby's got this awesome headless WordPress starter using Next. Really cool. So we have this code base here. It's on GitHub, Colby Fayock /Next WordPress Starter. The way it's built is let's take a look at some of the structure. If you go to the source directory and then go to pages, I just want to show kind of how some of the things are built, and then we'll look at the outcome, and we'll talk about some of the problems and what we're going to try and refactor to overcome some of those problems. So
yeah,
let's start with the outcome. You just opened a new tab, so let's take a look at what it looks like.
Yeah, so where I can start off, what I usually do is I can show kind of spinning it up for the first time. If you head to my GitHub, or Fran, if you want to post the link in the YouTube chat, but ultimately it's a Next.js starter. And my goal with this was to just give a really easy to use boilerplate for literally just plugging in your GraphQL endpoint using WPGraphQL in your headless WordPress instance, and you have a new website, right? So let's kind of see what that looks like. Now, if I head over to my terminal, which let me make sure that I have my big, nice font for the tab that I'm on, I'm going to paste in this create next app line, and let's call this demo WP GraphQL stream. So what this is going to do is it's going to clone down this Next.js project that I have on GitHub. It's going to install all the dependencies for me. It's even going to reset Git history, which is awesome. Basically, an easy way to jumpstart a new project. And we can see that it's already done. My internet was fortunately working well today. So let's cd into that directory. Now, if you're familiar with Next.js, you might typically right now run yarn dev, but we have one more thing we need to do, and that's set up that WP GraphQL endpoint. So I'm going to open this up in my code editor. head back to my browser, grab that environment variable, where the way that we're going to do this is we're going to create a .env.local file in the root of our project, which is the Next.js convention for an environment variable. And we can see here we have just a default value here, which of course this isn't going to work. So we want to replace this with ours. Now mine, I have my spacejelly.dev WordPress instance, and it looks like I wasn't logged in. I don't necessarily need to be logged in, but I'll show the content anyways. But once we are logged in, what I want to show you is really the biggest thing that I need to have for this to work with WPGraph, or for the starter, is that I have the WPGraphQL plugin installed. And if we look at my plugins, I have a bunch of other things in here for my spacejelly.dev site, but ultimately I have WPGraphQL. Looks like I'm a version behind. That's okay for now. But what we can do is if I go to my endpoint /GraphQL, we can see that it's going to load a GraphQL endpoint, where that means it's working. That means that the WP GraphQL extension, and we can even play around with the IDE later if we want, where it can show how you can build queries. Ultimately, this is working for us, and I can query my WordPress data with GraphQL, which is awesome. So if I head into my .environment file, and I replace that with my endpoint, I can now run yarn dev, which will spin up my local development server. And if I open that up in a new tab, it's going to start to compile that page in the background, where it's doing a few things, including pulling some global data, pulling page data. It's even doing some other things like creating a search index, an RSS feed, as well as a sitemap, which is cool. These are all things built into the starter. But we can see that I just pulled all that content that's originally from spacejelly.dev into this brand new WordPress site. And this is all built and compiled by Next.js. It even has page support. So if we want to go to my about page, it really has a lot of the basic things that you'd expect from a WordPress site. And this is all building inside of Next.js. But one of the things that Jason has brought to my attention is I'm not taking advantage of a lot of the tech that I can be doing in order to make sure that this is as performant as it can be, and just really best practices when it comes to working with Next.js and WP GraphQL. Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, so you have this code base up in an IDE. We'll take a look at some of the code and basically what we're going to try and refactor. So can you go into the source directory, and then I believe it's going to be pages, and pretty much any of your templates, I believe we can look at. Like, let's go to what's on your index page? I can't remember. Let me.
So the index is just a list of
that's
posts.
Just like a. Okay,
yeah.
That one's like
I don't have a dynamic
like your standard homepage. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll probably leave that one alone then. Yeah. So let's look at the post page. So there's two things where you want to probably change on this one. So if you look at the file name, we're using like square brackets slug.js. So what that's going to do, that's going to allow to visit a page, we have to go to page / and then the name of a thing. Let's look at that so we go here.
And in the background right now, it's compiling by pulling in that data from WP GraphQL.
Yeah, so for this one, if we look at the structure of the URL, it's prefixed post / and then the slug. And in the code base, we have a folder, posts, and then a file, slug. So what Next is going to do is going to take that slug, use it to talk back to WordPress to get the thing. One problem with this approach, having this nested like folder directory to defining your paths, WordPress and CMS, you can change your permalink structure in the CMS. And if you were to do that, your site would break, your headless site would break, because now your front end code base has an opinion on what the URL structure should be, and your CMS has a different opinion on what it should be. And so that's one pattern we're going to try and overcome. Like, how can we let WordPress be the source of truth that says, hey, this is what the URL structure should be, and how can we get Next to respect that, right? So if I change my URLs in WordPress, we want Next to understand that change. So that's one thing we're gonna look at refactoring. And then the other thing, can you scroll down on this template? I believe in this template, if I'm not mistaken, we have.
I think I just realized that I never So I actually, let me just copy some other code into that quick, because I realized I rolled back the commit on my starter, but I used create next app. So I'm actually with the changes that we're going to propose. So I just rolled back that code as if I went back in
All right.
time to
All
what
right.
I did before.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, the next thing we want to look at, if we look down here, we have this, what is it, get all posts. If we look at get static paths, so what this template is doing, this get static paths function is going to build a static page for any path that we pass to this function. What that means is if we want our entire site to be built statically up front, to query all the posts from our entire site and pass it to the pass function. So that's a common pattern we've been seeing in using Next is, hey, let's fetch every possible thing from WordPress, build it statically at build time, and we're good to go, right? Our whole site's static. That's good, but the downside of that is that when you make a change, you have to rebuild your whole site, and in exchange to make all of these GraphQL requests to your WordPress server, and it's essentially like trying to DDoS your WordPress server. You might be making one small change, but you're saying, hey, I'm going to query, 10,000 things all at once. I mean, depending on how big your site is. Small sites probably aren't going to see the impact, but big sites are going to see it. It's going to query 10,000 pages, and it's going to potentially overwhelm your WordPress server. We get reports a lot of the time like, oh, I'm seeing 504s or whatever, server timeouts from WordPress. Is that? Well, unfortunately, it's usually because you're trying to DDoS yourself. So you're sending basically a mass, almost attack on your server.
And just to give a little bit of context in the way that Next.js is making that happen is within get static path. So as Jason mentioned, we're getting all those posts in that first request, right? So in this part, we're just getting the slug, like the index of it, and telling Next.js that those pages exist. However, so that's going to be one big request, especially if you have a big request. But where this kind of doubles and exponentially grows is the way that Next.js works for generating those pages, because this is just telling Next.js that those paths exist. When we go to get static props, Next.js is going to run this function for every single one of those paths and say, for that parameter, for each and every one of those slugs, I'm going to make an additional GraphQL query. So that's where you're actually going to get that really high number of requests to the server, which is going to easily lead to those timeouts.
Yeah. So let's look at that. Can you go look at the get all posts function that we were just looking at? And let's look into that. So this query, yeah, click into it. Let's go look at and see what's happening here. Oh, you just copied it. So mine, is it in here still?
Yeah, this function's still in here.
Okay. So what this is doing, this
Sorry,
query.
This is the wrong one. Let me find the right one for you.
Okay. It was
close. Imports. I have two different ways of doing it. Lib posts.
Close enough.
Apparently, it wants to take time. So the way that I currently have this structured is I have a couple different ways to query the data, and I'm sure this is something we're eventually going to clean up and do a better way. The way that I'm doing this is so that I can either grab all the data in a GraphQL request or just like the index, and that includes like the title and the slug, so that I don't have to query for all that content and everything in every single request. A little bit of a performance win, but not at the scale that we're going to be talking about. But ultimately, that default one that we're looking at there is the index. So we're running this get all posts, which passes this index query, and I can show that if I go to data posts where I have that query defined, which is this.
Yeah, so what this is doing, it's asking WordPress for, in this case, what is that, up to 10,000 posts, password false. So it's asking for just strictly public, no password protected posts. And so, yeah, like Colby was saying, it's going to get that response. By default, WPGraphQL limit to just 100 posts anyway. But if you can change that in WPGraphQL to expose more if you want. And so if you've done that, this is going to return up to 10,000 things. And then next is, like Colby was saying, next is going to build a page for each of those, which is going to be potentially 10,000 queries immediately to your WordPress server. And that's the problem we're trying to solve here. So what I want to do, we're gonna start basically with like a brand new template file. So can you go to your pages directory? Let's just like basically change the directory to like pages.old or something like that. And we're going to like the whole pages directory, not just the posts one, a whole pages directory. Like change it to pages.old. This is going to break the next site, create a new directory called pages. And then let's create, you could move the index page maybe back from your pages.old. Maybe a couple other hard-coded templates like your 404 is probably fine there. Maybe your search or whatever. Let's start with those.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So are we in a state where if you build the site, it'll still build?
Let's try. I have to imagine those pages will work.
Yeah, that's my goal. Is hopefully we have. Uh-oh.
I'm curious why that wouldn't.
Oh, index. Because we might have moved something around.
Oh, the app and the document. That's going to be the issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So what I'm also doing, which I don't love, is inside of app.js, I'm additionally making queries there so that I can grab global data. And the reason I'm doing this is because I find it to be a better dev experience pattern to be able to query for this once rather than trying to include it in all different data fetching functions. Next.js is working on a better solution for global app data, which I'm excited for, but it's not quite there yet. So that's why I'm using get initial props for that.
Yeah, we may or may not to get to that section. We'll probably leave that alone for now.
Yeah, but the app's loading now. We're on the home page.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're at a point. We have the home page. That's just a hard coded page. So what we're gonna do next, under this new pages directory that we created, let's create a new file, and we're gonna use the square brace notion, which is like what does Next call this? Like a dynamic route or something like that?
Exactly, dynamic route. Yeah.
So, and we can give this whatever name we want. I believe, I can't remember the reason we need this. It's probably documented somewhere, but if you start with three, like ellipsis, like 3 dots, there's, I think it means a catch-all dynamic route. And then we can give it whatever name we want. So in my code, I called it like WordPress node. You could call it whatever you want. And then after the brace, you do .js. So what this is going to do, so let's put some code in here, just like export default React component of some sort that says like, hey, this is WordPress node or whatever.
Am I missing something? I'm missing something.
Export default.
Function. I gotta call it a function.
Yeah, there we go. So I believe, so what should happen now, if I did this correctly from memory, we should be able to go to any arbitrary route.
Like /Colby, of course.
Correctly. We might have to do so there you go. So any URL we pass to Next now is gonna attempt to use this template, unless we tell it not to, right? And so what we could do, so this is the approach we're going to take. We're going to have this wildcard or catch-all template that is going to get the URL. It's going to attempt to talk to WPGraphQL with that URL and build the page at runtime. So instead of at build time saying, hey, we're going to fetch 10,000 posts and build it all at build time, it's going to build it just when a visitor tries to visit the URL. So what that gets you is faster builds, and then you, as a publisher in WordPress, you can publish content, and as soon as it's published, folks can visit your headless JavaScript rendered site and see the content. They don't have to wait for a build, right? Yeah. There's a lot of folks are trying to solve the problem of like, oh, how can I list my actions in WordPress and send a webhook to Next and have Next rebuild my site? You don't need to, right? Like with the pattern we're talking about here, it'll work even in static too, which is what we're going to show. Is like the first user will visit the URL, it will build the page at runtime, put it on the CDN, and future visitors are going to be static there. So that's what we just saw is like, okay, this template will work for any URL. How do we hook it up to WordPress? So next, we're going to do this static too. So on this template, what we want to do, Colby, is add the get static props, whatever it is. We need to do two things for static. We need to do get static props and get static paths. And let me check that's two separate functions. So for get static paths, let's start there. So get static paths, let's start here. What we were doing previously was fetching up to 10,000 posts, returning it to the paths. What we're going to do instead is just put an empty array. So we're gonna say no paths. We're not gonna build any paths at runtime or at build time. We're gonna let it happen at runtime. And to happen at runtime, we do fallback blocking. In single quotes. So what this is gonna do, it's gonna say, okay, if you visit that URL like Colby, Next is gonna say, okay, I don't have anything in this URL built at build time. So I'm gonna wait, try and build the page right now if possible, and then I'll upload that to a static file on the CDN. If it can't, then it might return a 404, right? In our case, we are exporting a component. We're saying, hey, good to go, use this. So the first time you visit the Colby URL right now, it's gonna be server rendered. Mm-hmm. But then if you keep refreshing, it's gonna be static file. Obviously, you're on localhost, so it's probably not gonna have the full effect like if you deployed it. But that's the idea.
You can even see that once I'm refreshing the page, like I'm no longer getting those creation and compilation messages. So it's returning that page that was already built. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So that's the idea. We're trying to make the publishers in WordPress happy, be able to publish the content users could visit immediately. We're making developers happy by reducing their build times, that feedback loop, right? Of gotta wait for a build, right? You know, because on big sites they get timing. So let's take it to the next step. So we have this basic template that's working. So go change the URL to something else just so we can see it's going to work with any URL, right? Which we don't want to have happen. Also, though, right? Like we don't want Next to just respect anything. We want it to respect if we actually have content for it. So the next step we're going to do, we're gonna have our get static props function talk to WordPress given the URL that you visited, and we're going to determine if there actually is a WordPress node there or not. So that's the next step. So let's go back to your get static props function, and we're gonna write some code in here. The first thing, I'm gonna share a small snippet in Slack for you to copy in here real quick.
Okay.
And then you can put that in and we'll walk through it. You might have to adjust a few things. So I just shared that in Slack. We'll walk through. We might have to modify a couple things, but basically what we're trying to do here is in your get static props, it's going to pass context as an argument to the function. Okay. So add context there. Yeah, cool. So what's going to happen when you visit a URL, get static props function is going to have some context in there, and we're going to try and pluck the URL out of that, send it to WPGraphQL to determine if that URL represents a node that exists in WordPress. So I have this conditional block here actually allows this method to work with static or server rendered. So if for some reason you want to do server rendered next, you can. If you want to do static, you can as well. So what we're looking at here.
One good use case of using server side is if you want to give draft previews or something.
Yes, that's anything that would require authentication is definitely going to want to, in most cases, probably going to need to be server side. Otherwise, you're going to do static and then client side rendered for any authenticated stuff, and the user experience gets weird sometimes. Yeah. The developer experience gets weird sometimes too. So, but yeah, so this condition is saying if we're looking for a resolved URL, actually, you know what? On line 13, why don't you console log the context?
Sure.
Yeah, so we can, and then go visit the page, we should see, I believe it's going to be in your terminal. We should see context. You may, yeah,
I'm going to
there you go.
I'm going to disable these plugins quick, just so that things load faster while we're working on
yeah,
this.
that's fine.
So we should, once this
yeah,
loads,
we see, okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to say, we do see the context up there.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
All right. So the context here, it gives us params and then a field or whatever, a property that matches the name of the template file. So whatever we named our template file, we did ... WordPress node. We could name it whatever. We could name it, purple lights, or whatever, and it'll come back as that key. So
is that because I have purple lights on in the background?
Yeah, I do too, but yours are way better than mine. Yours are so it's like what comes to mind. So whatever we call it, it's going to come back through that. Let me show you the alternate. So go back to your code editor and change, instead of get static props, just change the name of the function to get server side props. Just so we can see the difference.
Did I do something wrong?
You need to just comment that out for now. So if you want to do SSR, you might, you just need to let it.
Yeah, it's refreshing. So there we go.
What we just did was change the page to be server rendered instead of static rendered, and we still get context from Next, but the shape of the context is a lot different, as you see. Like
you get the entire request.
We're seeing a lot more stuff. So what this function is doing, if we go back to the code, if you actually line up, you actually had it up in the terminal. The resolved URL right there.
Okay.
That, if you're doing server rendered, it gives you this property, which is like it's the full path you try to visit. So try and visit like a long path, like add a couple slashes or whatever, and we'll see it. Like Jason and then slash something, yeah. And then maybe slash child post or something. So if you do that, yeah. So in WordPress, this is in a lot of websites, this URL structure is not that foreign, right? You often might have a taxonomy name and then the name of a taxonomy term and then the post within it or something.
You there?
Yeah. Oh shoot! Did I drop?
No, I just didn't hear you talking for a second.
Yeah, that was weird. What's the last thing you heard? Sorry.
Good question. We were talking about the taxonomy and how you can have nested routes.
Okay, yeah, you didn't miss that much then. I must have just cut out for a second. Yeah, so basically, like any URL. Oh no, I keep losing. Did I just cut out again?
Yeah, you did.
You
seem good right now.
Yeah, it looks like it's showing my network signal is weak.
Who's playing Xbox?
Oh yeah, that's true. Probably my kids. Well, hopefully it's fine. If I have to boot them, I'll boot them.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, what the goal here is, like, whatever URLs that WordPress decides is what we want to use. We want Next to be able to respect that, and we don't want to have to call our developer and say, "Hey, I need you to build a new template, add a specific path in the Next code base that matches this." We don't want to have to do that, right? We want to get the benefits of like Next and React and component-based architectures, but we also want to get the benefits of using a CMS, right?
And so something like I just thought that's helpful to show is probably the taxonomy settings, right? Like in WordPress, like this is the context of what we're talking about, right? Where you can completely customize this structure, and this is going to be how the WordPress admin works. But if in the current way that I have the application, if you change this, it's not going to do anything.
It's going to potentially break. You'll have links throughout your site that don't work anymore. Your publisher, your content creators are going to be upset with you. So yeah, that's the idea is we want these URLs to work. So let's so I showed that like this data exists in both static and server side. We're going to just work with static right now, but that's what that if else if condition is looking for. It's trying to figure out what the URL is if you're static or server rendered, so that it can work in either one. So let's change it back to get static get static props or whatever it is.
And I will re-comment this in. And just for the simplicity for now, I'm going to get rid of this additional if statement just so that so people can more easily follow along as we're working through this.
That works. So what this is doing then is checking if the context has this property that we're looking for, then we're going to attempt to resolve. If there's no resolved URL in the context for whatever reason, if Next decides not to provide it for some reason, we're going to return not found. What that does, that tells Next, not necessarily to 404, but it tells Next, don't return this template. Go do your thing. Usually that thing that Next would do is try and find another template. So if you had two catch-all templates, it would go to the next one. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's in alphabetical order. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But I believe like if we could potentially do like a square bracket ... Shopify node.js. And if you hit a URL, it might try and get the data from Shopify. If that returns not found, it would move to WordPress node, try and resolve from WordPress. If it succeeds, it builds the page. So you can potentially, do things with different data sources this way. For now, we're concerned about WordPress. I haven't proven that theory of using multiple sources. So
and also one thing to also to allude to here too, if you're familiar with the WordPress ecosystem and how WordPress themes work, this is kind of replicating how that works, right? Like if you do understanding that template system, it's going to look for specific files in that theme system, and it's going to go through and try to see if it can find the right theme ultimately before using fallbacks if it can't find that specific file.
By the way, I might as well just mention this stream is brought to you by Air Fried Pizza. So yeah, anyway. Okay, so what we're going to do next, so basically at this point in the code, we're saying if there's no URL, like move on. What we want to do next though is actually talk to WordPress. So if I'm not mistaken, you have Apollo set up in this repo, is that correct?
I do, and I think I have the caching policy that from your template. This is the only difference that I had in mind compared to what's up there now, but ultimately I'm just creating an Apollo client and I'm returning it. So should we import that in?
Yeah, we need the client. This code's a little bit different than what I've worked with, so we might have to work through some things here, but I think it's probably pretty close.
I can show you an example.
Is it 1P and 2 Ls? Is that a typo or is my...
Wait, what?
I think it's 1P, 2 Ls. Yeah, your import. You did Apollo with on the...
Thank you. I also want to make sure. Yep. Okay. So this is how I typically query my my data. So like this. So I grab the Apollo client, which just returns the instance from memory or creates a new one if it doesn't exist. And then we have the client where we can write our query. I think I also need to import GraphQL, right?
GQL, I think.
I think I can import I probably need to import that right from, what do I do? From Apollo client itself.
Yeah. So,
that right?
So GQL, yep. So where are we at? We have our, hold on. Did you, we need to do this after the resolved URL. So we need to put this on line like 30. Well, no, on line 20. No, sorry. After the,
I'm shifting it around on you.
Yeah, after the not resolved, it's on.
After the not resolved. Good point. Yeah. Good point. Okay.
So basically, we're doing an early return. We're saying if Next doesn't have resolved URL for us, let's bail as soon as we can.
Okay.
If it does have a URL, let's try and talk to WPGraphQL. Let's talk to our WordPress server with that information. So this is where we'll hop over to graphical in your WordPress admin. And we're going to construct a query.
So if you go to GraphQL, there is the graphical IDE, which you get that for free after you installing WPGraphQL.
Okay, cool. So let's clear this query out. You can Command A. I think we'll select it all and then delete. Cool. So we're gonna create a there's a really cool query. If you go over to the docs on the right hand side, in graphical, the right top corner, docs. Search node by URI. And I have another video on the WPGraphQL YouTube about this specific query. So if you want to learn more about it, you can watch that. What this does, this entry into the graph tries to work basically like WordPress itself works. If you visit a URL, WordPress determines that the thing is a post or a page or a user or an archive or a category or tag or whatever the thing is. There's logic in here that says, hey, give me a URL, I'll figure out what the thing is and return something. So we can use the query composer if you want. I'd rather just type if you want to close it.
I'm a GraphQL noob, so I usually resort to that.
So let's write the word query first before the brace, just to start, because we're going to use variables. So if you haven't used variables in GraphQL, this will be a quick primer. So after query, we give it a name, and this can be named whatever you want. Let's call it get node by URI, maybe.
And we have a quick question here in the comments. And so there, Christian's asking why use Apollo instead of pure GraphQL and JS. And I just know Apollo is a really common pattern to use for GraphQL, and I know it has caching mechanisms, but beyond that, I don't really know myself.
You could use pure GraphQL JS. Basically, what we're trying to do, we're trying to fetch data from WordPress, get it into Next, and Apollo's abstracted a lot of stuff for us, right? You could use just regular fetch, like Jordan just said too. It doesn't matter what you use, whatever you're comfortable with. For me, I like Apollo. It abstracts a lot of things. It gives us hooks like the use query hook and the Apollo client.query. So it abstracts a lot of stuff away from us that we can just focus on saying, hey, this component should have this data. I don't want to worry about how to get the data. I just want to ask for the data. Apollo figures out a lot of that. And then it puts it into a cache, and it can determine whether it should resolve from the cache or from the network or some of each. So I think it solves a lot of problems that you'll end up running into potentially if you start with vanilla fetch or something else. Over time, you might run into these issues, and Apollo's thought of a lot of them.
It's probably a similar question to like some of the other tooling out there for regular requests, right? Like regular REST requests, like using the use query library or the use SWR library rather than just using vanilla fetch, right? They provide those additional capabilities and abstractions so that you have something you know is going to work when you're working with it easily.
Yeah, and for what we're doing at the moment, we're using it on the server side. So it's Apollo on the Next server that is talking to WPGraphQL. But then what's cool is it does have the ability to populate the client-side cache as well. So we can pass stuff from the server to the client, and then we can let the client take over. Like, let's say we did it. We're not going to do this today, but let's say we had a page that had maybe the first 5 comments of a post rendered by the server. You could take that query and pick it up and do stuff on the client side, like reply to a comment, and in response you get a payload that would merge it with the existing list of comments. So you can do client and server stuff, and it'll mesh pretty well together, because
even like pagination, right?
Yeah, pagination, infinite scroll, things like that. I think Apollo is going to help you quite a bit there, because it'll do the initial fetch for you, but it puts it in a cache, and then and then your client-side queries can append or prepend or whatever to that cache. So let's get back to this query though. So node by URI query. We're giving it a name. So then on line 2 where your cursor's at, type the word node by URI. and it'll start pre-filling for you. And then do parentheses, and this takes one argument, URI, and it's a required argument. We have to pass something, so do colon, and then let's do $ URI. This is going to allow us to pass a variable in. We haven't defined a variable yet, so we have to do that on line 1. So on line 1, where you wrote query by node URI, let's add some parentheses after node by URI. And here we have to tell GraphQL what variables we're expecting. So we do $URI and then colon, and we have to tell GraphQL what type of data to expect for this. And in our case, it's string. So colon and then, URI colon string.
I was trying to get back up that autocomplete and it didn't work.
Yeah, it's okay. So you do string and then exclamation point. We're telling it's required. So the exclamation point, we're telling GraphQL this query is expecting a variable and it's supposed to be a string and it's required. If we don't pass a variable called URI, this thing's not going to work, right? So we're saving ourselves from making a mistake, right? So then on line 2 also, let's do curly braces, and then do __ type name. So any object that you query in GraphQL, and this is not unique to WPGraphQL. This is any GraphQL API that follows GraphQL spec. You can query for type name, and it'll tell you what type the thing is. So it's not in the schema docs, but it's like a hidden field. So we have this query in variables, the pane that you're in now below. This is going to be a JSON object, so open some curly braces and then give it a key of ID. Or sorry, URI. Sorry. You're like, wait, what? My bad. I usually anyway. And then whatever, we can go in your WordPress, like open your post in a new tab or something and go get a URL to something. Yeah.
That's not very responsive, is it?
Yeah. If you scroll down, there's a view button.
I thought I clicked it.
Yeah, that. Oh, you might have.
Because you can grab the slug as like a thing, right? Or can you do it in there?
Yeah,
as well?
sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so here, the URL slug. Am I going to need more than that? Or no, here's the perma.
Oh, you want the full permalink.
Okay.
Without your domain, though. Yeah. Cool. So if you paste that in, oh, interesting.
Yeah, I saw that. Do you see that pasted in on the end there? Oh, I can't see the end of it.
Resize the
Make sure that
the middle. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's what I try.
Well,
I think because I have like Command Plus, it probably cuts it off a little bit. That's probably why. Oh,
yeah,
like
you can resize that. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Click the play button. If we did that right, it should take that URI and it should return a post. Cool. So
quick question for you.
Yep.
So you mentioned that type name is a hidden field, but it seems that we're using it in a way that is like a first-class use of it, right? Can you explain the difference between that?
It's just it's built into every WP GraphQL server, so it's just not exposed in the schema docs and graphical for some reason. I think it's because it's not unique to your GraphQL API. If you're using GraphQL, you can do this.
Gotcha.
So I think they don't expose it. I don't know the reasoning.
Just curious.
But it's there, but it's not hidden because it's like unsafe or something. It's hidden because I think it's supposed to be probably known that this is part of GraphQL no matter what server you're using.
That's good to know, because I've always assumed that like the underscores denoted that it's something that shouldn't really be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's okay.
I think GraphQL uses it to annotate built-in, or something. I'm sure there's written documentation, but I think it's built in as the underscores. Anyway, so we can pass the URL, we get a post back. If you under type name on line 3, we can query for other information like URI. So you type URI, and then you'll see, here we have we know we got the right thing. So if you go back into your WordPress dashboard and maybe go to pages and get a URL of a page, same thing. And instead of coming back as type name post, it'll come back as type name page. Yeah, so we should be able to do that. It'll say, oh, this is in page. So now we're able to differentiate based on this URL. We know the difference between these things. WordPress can say, hey, this is a page, this is a post. What if you type something that you know doesn't exist in WordPress, like Colby? Yeah. It should say null. So we have a null response. We're saying, sorry, pal, like I don't know what this thing is, right? If you as a public user passed a URL to like a draft post, you would also get a null. If you're authenticated, you would get the object, right? So like if you were trying to access some unpublished content, like it's gonna return a null. All right, so I'm gonna give you an expanded version of this query in Slack. Okay. It's this, but it has a lot more conditions. Let's see. I will paste this in Slack, and you can pull it in here. I know how to type.
Here we go. Okay.
You can put it straight here if you.
Okay. Never mind.
Yep. So you can put it here. You could, if you want, abstract it into its own const and then use that. Whatever you're comfortable with. You can refactor it later too. Whatever you want to do. Yeah. But anyway, what this is doing, if you paste this back in GraphQL too, like the whole string that you just pasted in here. Let's just look at it in here. And click that prettify button real quick. Let me just double check, make sure it's all good. I thought I saw some red squigglies, but maybe not. Okay, cool. Let's put a valid URL back in there. Yeah, val for that. Yeah. Cool. So now it's asking for a lot more information. So we have these fragments. If you look over in the query on the left side, we have these ... notations. Those are called fragments in GraphQL. What they allow us to do is reuse bits of a query and kind of modularize the query. So we can keep these fragments in different files if we wanted to. We can however we're comfortable with doing it. And then we can also reuse them in our query. But what we're doing, so at the very top, we're saying same thing we were just doing. We're saying given a URI to a WordPress resource, we want to get the node back. And then we're using the fragment node by URI, which is defined on line 7. And on node by URI, we ask for a couple of fields. We say we want the type name, the URI, and the ID. We always want that information no matter what. If given a node, as long as it doesn't return null, if it can resolve, we want those fields. But then we have these other fragments. We say, like the first one, database identifier. If the node has a database ID, we want it. Not everything does. Like in WPGraphQL, you can query things like themes and plugins, which are you can query those. They're nodes, but they don't have database IDs themselves. So
in
not
the
everything
context,
does.
In the context of like our application and like just building the front end, what's the use case of a database ID?
Yeah, so there's a concept in WordPress called template hierarchy, and what this is, what we're ultimately going to potentially get to. I don't know if we'll get there today, but what we're going to try and get to is talking to WordPress, get some data about the node, and then use this information to be able to map to a template to represent the thing. And so let's say you had a big site with like, take something like Smashing Magazine or something, that has like thousands of contributors that have written content over time. Let's say you wanted maybe the user with the database ID 1409 to have a specific template that looks different than everybody else. Yeah. What you would be able to do is use that in your template, and in WordPress you can do this today. You could say like author-123.php would become the template for that one author, and everybody else would just use author.php, for example. So what we're doing, we're trying to get some initial data from WordPress, and then we can use that data to do something like that, map to a specific template, or maybe show a sale for a specific product, or you know, like whatever it might be. We get some basic information, then we can do something different with that thing. So we have it for database ID. I'm not going to get into all the weeds here, but basically we have these fragments for different cases. We have, if it has a database ID, please give it to us. If it's a content type, let's just scroll down. We'll quickly hit them. If it's a content type, that would be like an archive of a post or a post type like post or page or houses or cars or whatever you're using. We ask for that. If it's a term or a user, we ask for different fields. So all of these things have different data that can be provided. And so this is like an inline switch statement almost. We're telling GraphQL at the query level, if it meets this condition, if it's a content node or if it's a term node or if it's content type, give us these fields in response. So we have this data. So we want to do something with it. So let's go back to our code base. We have two conditions to expect. We're either going to get a node back from this, or we're going to get a null, right? Let me go back to my code. I'm probably going to have a little bit more to share. Okay, so we're doing the const data equals await Apollo client get query, or not get query, sorry, query. So that data, let's console log the data online, whatever. Yeah, down here. And then go in your next, go visit a URL, one of the valid URLs.
The valid URLs.
Yeah.
So not the one that we are both cool.
Do an invalid one too. It actually doesn't matter. We could start with the invalid one, honestly.
We got the context. Did I go to the right? Maybe I didn't go to the right URL. Or maybe I deleted too many things. Let's see here.
Should be a
Oh, you know what?
thing.
I think what's happening, or what? First of all, we never passed the variable to the function.
Oh yes. Yep.
This
yes.
is all. I just have to.
Yeah. It's variables plural.
Oh, thank you. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a property to the Apollo client API where, along with my query, we want to pass that variable, right? Of course we do. So this is where I'm going to pass in the variables, particularly the URI, where I'm going to pass in that resolve URL. So let's see if this time this works. So I'm wondering if it's not working because we're only joining and it doesn't have.
I see why. I see why.
Okay.
No, I see why. In the code that I had you paste, you named your template WordPress node with a lowercase w, and right there on line 20, I was using a capital. Yeah, line 18 and 20. So just change those to lowercase. Okay. And on right there. So what that's doing, we saw it just had an array of the path segments. We're just joining it back to a string separated by slashes.
I was wondering if it needed that first slash though. Do you think it needs that first?
It should be fine now.
Okay, it's still not resolving. Why is it giving me a null resolved URL? Okay, so I got the context, WordPress node, context params, WordPress node. Oh, okay, so the P, I also had the P lowercase. So just for the sake of getting this working, I think that should work now.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, there we go.
All right. So it found the node. It found the node, so it went ahead and returned the template, right? Let's pass a URL like your Colby one, for example, that is going to have no data. Yeah, so yeah, there we go. Colby. So this for our data, yep, there you go. See, if you look at the console log, data node null, but it still returned our hello template. We don't want that to happen. We want this to say, hey, we don't know what this is. So what we're going to do after the query, after the data, let's check to see if the node returned something. So we can say, yeah, data, what is it? Data node. Yep. So if that's empty, basically, we're gonna return not found true.
So basically the same thing as here.
Yeah. There might be a better way to structure this, but yeah, for now. So we're gonna say, so this should 404 now, if we did it correctly. To WordPress, it can't find the node. It's gonna return null.
Perfect. Yeah.
Boom, 404.
So let's go to
now go put a valid URL. Yep, and it should resolve our hello template. Cool.
Back to our type name.
So now at runtime, if you let's do something really cool. Is that a production WordPress site that you're hooked to right now? If we publish,
yeah, I mean, like, oh yeah. So it'll get published on my spacejelly.dev site, but I don't really care that much.
Let's do it. I do it live all the time. Here, let's go to a post. Let's publish a post. Let's just change the date to like 1999 though, just before you publish it, just so it's not the top of your blog roll.
Okay, this is probably also going to get a tweet, but that's okay.
So yeah, just change it. Yeah, cowboy coding, cowboy CMSing. Yeah, there you go. So let's publish it, man. Let's do it live. So you publish that, and then this is going to have a URL. You can visit this URL immediately. So just take the path to it and go put it in your next URL, and this thing will be there now. We don't have to wait for. So it's there. Like
Yay.
our template doesn't really show much, but it's there, right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
And this is also going to be clear, this isn't just because we're on local development. This is going to happen also on Vercel servers, on Netlify servers, wherever you get full like incremental static regeneration support for Next.js, you're going to get the same capability. It might just be different as to how that page is actually rendered and then served, where if it's not available, like we're doing, it'll check to see if you can find the data. And if we find that data, it's going to compile that page and render it and cache it for the next static visit.
Yep. So let's see, we should be getting more data than type name. Oh, I know why. Okay. I'm gonna send you another. Okay. So since we're using Apollo, I totally forgot about this. Since we're using Apollo, there's this mechanism in Apollo called the fragment matcher. And so you have to provide Apollo with a list of possible types to Apollo, so that when fragments are queried, it knows how to match them.
Is there a way to disable that temporarily?
No, not that I know of, but I can give you a snippet really quickly.
Okay.
Let me see where I have it. 1 second. Ooh, sorry, I totally forgot about this part. Okay. So putting this in Slack for you. So let's put that in a new file. I have it under scripts directory. It basically it's going to be like a script that runs when you start Next. So whatever you want to call it, scripts, and then I have it I personally have it on a file just called getpossibletypes.js. Yeah, and then so paste that in, and then change your endpoint.
I'm gonna have to run this, right?
You will, but it's not gonna work yet. We have a couple more things we have to do.
Okay, so what do I do next?
Change that on line 7. I have it pointed to my graph. It looks for that, and then it falls back to default. You can just make sure it's using that, and then you could probably point it to yours or just get rid of it or whatever. So save that, and then we have to go to our package.json. And
can I just simply run it for now?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you can. I added it as a pre-build script just so when you run, but yeah, you can run it. was asking if this repo is going to be public. It's already a public repo. We're refactoring. I imagine the artifact will be a PR, and then ideally at some point probably a finished result. But yeah, it should all be public, I believe, Diego.
Yeah, I'll definitely put this up as a PR. I don't think this will be the final PR, but I'll. Is it not able to pull this in? Oh, probably because I don't have. I probably need .env, right?
And you might need to. I'm using the cross fetch package. It looks like, and you might need that also.
Yeah, I added that in there. Was it
okay,
require .env? Is like that? I think.
I totally
If I did it
about
right.
this.
Big. Isn't that running? Absolutely URLs recorded.
Oh, it's because you have just a.
Not finding my. Weird. Why isn't it?
Oh,
It's because it's under .env.local. Ugh. How do I load a
URL for now?
file?
And
oh yeah, I can just bypass it for
now, and we'll figure that out later. It might be because this is a script that's running outside of like the next process formally.
Yeah, and it looks for the .env by default, not .env.local.
Yeah.
So now it can't find the property schema.
Let me see the URL you pasted. Oh, interesting. Oh, do you have? Can you go into your WordPress admin? Do you have? Oh, I know what you have. Yeah, go to your GraphQL settings. You have to turn on public introspection. So GraphQL settings, I think it's there's public.
This one,
the very bottom one. Yep, click that one.
Are there any security concerns? Like, why isn't that enabled by default?
Situation. If you were like I don't know. I leave it enabled on mine. Some folks might not want to expose their schema publicly.
Okay.
The resolvers should be responsible for ensuring, data that isn't public isn't resolving publicly. But yeah, it depends on your situation. You might not want somebody to be able to analyze your schema. So yeah, it's disabled by default, but you could get around that. Cool. So that should have put it in the file called possible types.json, I think at the root of the, yeah, cool. So in your Apollo config, go to your Apollo config. Sorry, this is sidetracking. I totally forgot about this. In your Apollo config, we need to pass this in. I don't have this memorized. Let me look at mine. So your in-memory cache right above type policies, you do possible types, and then you can just import it. Import possible types from whatever your file data generated is.
So that's save. Those are the root, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to get
/ possible types.json. All right.
That's
cool. So yeah. This / and it's working. I think
that will work.
Okay. I think, unless I did something at some point to customize it. So what we should see now, type policies. What are these?
Oh, did I
need
not?
A comma.
Yeah.
We forgot a comma. So what we should see now, we were seeing our console log was showing just the type name was being returned. We should see a lot more data being returned now if we look at that console log.
Yep.
There we go. Cool. So what I do in my code base, I have that script run as a pre-build script. So anytime I run npm build in my next app or npm pre-build and pre-dev or something like that.
Okay.
So I have pre-build and pre-dev. I just have it run that script. So anytime I start my next app, it runs that script, generates the file fresh, and then you're good to go. So
And if
that just
you-
tells Apollo how to resolve these fragments, basically.
And one thing, like if you do have a situation where that data is private, I would imagine you could provide an authenticated request in a script like that for your own personal code base, correct?
Yeah, exactly. You would, like, if you wanted to keep introspection disabled, you could potentially pass like a token or JWT or whatever it is that authenticates you. Yeah, you would be able to do that. Yeah, that's different topic, but yeah, that's good question. Good call out. So now we're getting some data back. So next what we want to do, I have a lot of abstraction around this. I don't think we're going to get to it today. But let's go back to your code editor. We want to take some of this information and resolve a template of some sort, right? So like you had your templates kind of hard coded under like authors / something, category / something. Mm-hmm. We ultimately want to enable those templates to work still. We're just changing how we get to them, right?
Yeah. So like the authors one, yeah. So like I created a template archive, for instance, so that I can pass in a list of posts and it would do it. But I don't think we're going through we probably want to just play with, for this example, we probably just want to play with a new template.
I think it'll work. I think it'll work.
Okay.
And it'll be a tiny bit of refactoring, but not too much.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's scroll down in your code to where we return stuff. Okay. So let's return in props what we want to return here. So we do our query. Let's see. Hold on. I'm getting myself. So we want to, trying to think how to simplify this because I have a lot of abstractions here.
So at this point, we probably want to also get the content, right?
Yeah, not yet. So we're doing a two-step fetch. So we fetch to figure out what the node is given the URI, and then we're going to ask for a template, and that template is going to decide what data that template needs.
Got it.
So we're not going to have like this big global query that figures it out. We're having the query that we have right now that gets data by a URI, and then we're going to pass that to a template, and that template is going to ask for what it needs specifically. So similar to what you were doing, you were querying for like get 1,000 posts, and then let each post ask for what it needs. We're doing a similar approach. We're just doing it at runtime now, using the URI, but then we also have additional information like the ID, the type of content, the slug, so then we can make decisions on what templates route to. So let's we need to return. We have two things here. We have a template that we need to return, right? Up at the very top of the file, we're just returning hello. Yep. And we also have our props or our static props that we need to return. Yep. Whatever we return from get static props will be available in the template, right?
Yep.
So let's for props, let's just return. I have some abstractions around this, but I'm going to try and simplify it.
And it looks like there's a question from David. You can use not a question, a statement. You can use GraphQL code gen to generate the possible types and get TypeScript hinting for your GraphQL in your IDE. Yeah, I'm still not on board the TypeScript train, so.
Same. It hurts my brain. So whatever. If you love it, use the tools that work for you, man. I probably should use it. I'm over here developing a strongly typed API, and then on the flip side, I don't use strongly typed JavaScript. So I don't know what's wrong with me. I need more air fried pizza or something. All right. Okay. So what we're gonna do just some basic logic to we're gonna have basically what the goal I want to have is to show how we can have different templates based on the data that gets returned. Okay. So let's go just somewhere in this file above our get static props function. Let's create just an array, like do const equals empty object. Const templates. Let's do it above. Sorry, like outside the function. Let's do like right here, like const template equals empty object. Sorry, not array. I think I said array, but let's do an empty object. Okay, let's give a name like a key. Hold on, let me see. Let's do like content node, for example. Let's do content node and then colon. I think does it need to be single quotes? I don't know my JavaScript. I think we're fine. Yeah, that should be fine. So then and then do object, and let's do component colon, and then just put a component here, just like a anonymous function component, and just have it return content node or whatever, like content node. Cool. And then so we're gonna have a component here. We're gonna have a query. So under component, let's do query. And let's this will be just a GQL query. So let's just make it real simple. So open, close curly braces, underscore type name. That's like the most basic query you can query. It doesn't actually ask for anything. And then under query, let's add another key to this object called variables. And let's do, this will accept an argument. So this will be a callback. So it'll be anonymous function, like an arrow function.
Do I have to add a key to this?
No, sorry. Instead of the curly braces, do the function. So it'll be variables colon and then anonymous function. Sorry, on line 25. Yeah, there you go. And then we're gonna get in the variables we'll get the root node or we'll get the root node that we query, or you can call it node or whatever you want to call it, WordPress node. We're gonna get that here, and then we can. So basically, it's gonna be two steps. We did that fetch that we just set up. I'm kind of doing this out of order, but we did the fetch that we set up. We're gonna set up a way to pass that node here and execute a second query and return this component. If you're following me. Yep. So cool. So the query, so let's console log the WordPress node right there on 26 where you're at, just so we can see what's going to happen. All right, cool. So that's that. And let's see, we want from templates. Okay. So let's add another template. So we did one called content node.
Do we want to get that running first?
Let's add a fallback one too. Let's have two to start with, just so we can see the difference. So let's keep it in the template. I think you pasted it too far below.
Well, isn't it just creating another key or no?
Yeah, no, you just you need to do it inside the curly brace right above it. You nest it.
So two templates, right?
But on line 29, I think it needs to be pasted after the curly brace on 27. If I'm looking at this right. Oh, maybe not. No, you're right. Okay, my eyes were tricking me. I'm sorry. So let's just call this one like index or whatever. And change the return. Sorry, my eyes were.
No worries. The
indentation.
Making sure I wasn't crazy.
Cool. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have an index template which we'll use as our fallback. So if we're gonna write some logic that tries to say, given the URL, let's try and map it to a specific template and return a specific component that can then query its own data. If it can't find anything, just fall back to this index template. So we'll start with two templates. Okay. So we have these two templates. Let's go down to get static props. Where is it? Let's see. Get static props. All right. Okay. So we're gonna have like a switch statement now. Where are we? Sorry, 1 second.
I don't write switch statements often, so hopefully I get this right.
If else, it doesn't matter. It could be easier to read. I don't care.
If else.
Yeah, let's do if else is fine.
Was that data node? And am I looking if it is a content node?
Yeah, 1 second. What are we returning here? Sorry, I'm looking at my old code to determine what I want to do. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna say if is content node, then what we want to do, yeah, we're gonna say template equals templates content node. Yeah, else template equals templates dot index.
It's too bad there wasn't a content or node type field that you can like pass in, so that you can do something like this, like templates node type. You know what I mean? That object.
You kind of can. So I have in my code base I have this a lot more abstracted.
Okay.
Let's just finish this up and show the two, and then we'll probably call it a day for now.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we have if else. So if it's content node, it's going to show the first template. Otherwise, it's going to show the second. So we get that template. What we're going to do though next, we're going to do a second Apollo query. So on line 146, or let's just do it after your console log, or get rid of the console log, whatever you want to do. So we're going to do another Apollo query. So let's do await. We want to await it. So it'll be await Apollo client dot query. Are we awaiting the one above too?
Imagine. I'm just going to also copy and paste this.
Okay. Yep. So we're going to do another query. What we're going to do here, we're going to query. The query is going to come from the template. So we're going to say query instead of GQL. Instead of GQL right there, we're going to say template.query. And then variables will be template.variables. And I believe trying to does that make sense? Yeah, I think so.
Let's try and console log it out.
Yeah. Hold on. You got the variables is a callback, so it's
oh, that's right. Yeah.
We got to pass the root. We got to pass the node to it. So it'll be variables, and then as a function, and then we're going to pass the node that we got above.
This one?
So yeah, yep.
Okay. So WordPress node. Is that what you're expecting?
And then are we? Oh, almost. So we're getting the data. We're doing the thing. We also need to apply some logic to our component that we're returning.
Okay.
So WordPress node, we're going to do a similar thing. So up in the component. For the props, let's get the data from that. So we did that second the template data. So on our props that we're returning, let's return, I don't care, template data and regular data. Well, we did two queries, right? We did the root query.
Oh, so we want all of that?
Query. Yeah, let's return both. Just two separate keys.
Oh, you prefer? Okay.
I mean, we could probably go either way. Let's do it as two separate keys.
An example, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
One thing, did we ever return from the callback? Because I think we're just console logging out. Yeah, see, we're only console logging out the WordPress node for the variables. So we probably want to return that, right?
Yep. We want to return, so the variables, it needs to be a JSON object with the shape that we asked for. So our query, let's do a query up on let's scroll up, our GQL query that we just asked for type name. Let's do a query like query for a post by ID, for example. So just post, and then colon or parentheses $ID. Sorry, yeah, or ID colon $ID. So we're going to do a variable. Sorry, the ID colon and then $ID, and then give it a name. So on line 21, say get post by ID. on line 21. So query get post by ID.
Then we have to add that variable, right?
Yep. So $ID, and then this one will be capital Y, capital D, exclamation point, and give it the word query before that on line 21. Query.
Okay.
Cool. So we're going to say we're going to get the post by ID. We're going to get the ID from the WordPress node. So on line 30, let's return a JSON object, and it'll be ID word, yeah, ID WordPress node.id. So we're going to get the ID from that initial payload. We get the ID. We're going to use that in a variable. It's going to execute this query, and then we're returning the props. Hold on, one second. Let's close the loop real quick. Scroll down to where we return stuff. We return we return everything in there. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're returning the data and the template data. This is going to come through to our component. So let's go all the way up to our component now, and we get some props coming through.
We probably want this templates above.
Right? Yes, we do. Yeah. Yep, you're correct. We'd end up like abstracting this and importing it. So let's add props. We're going to get some props passed in here as a argument or whatever. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So let's just on like under hello, let's just do a pre-tag outputting this stuff. You can even just pull in props so we can see everything that's coming if you want, or you can do it data or whatever you want. Yeah, JSON stringify. Yeah, cool. So we'll get data and template data. Cool. So now we should, if we did this right.
Post by ID on type. Did you mean post by? Looks like post by
yeah.
ID doesn't work.
Yeah, sorry. It's just regular post. I'm sorry. I should have caught that.
Like
just
this?
Do post. No, even get rid of the by. Just post. Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So now we have a template that it gets to define. It gets the variable saying, this URL is a post. I want to then query whatever I want, right? So that first thing is the root query that it ran. The second one is the template query. So the template can now ask for whatever it wants. It could ask for things coming from advanced custom fields. It could ask for connected categories or tags, right? So let's go back and basically do like let's add something here. So under title, do like title, like date and content.
Okay.
And maybe even the author. Like author is going to be a connection, so it'll be curly braces, node, and then you can say like name or whatever, first name, last name, whatever you want. Cool. So if you save that, refresh, we should see that. Template gets to So now that at the template level, the template gets to decide, similar to what you were doing before. You had a template for post, template for categories. The template gets to decide what its query is, how it gets it, whether it gets it by slug or by ID or by something else.
Yeah.
And then you can start breaking it up into components. Like we could have an author component that has its own fragment that gets imported into that. So yeah, you're able now to break your thing up into templates. Your builds are going to be faster because it's not building every path. You're able to so we could use the same templates you use already. We could import those components. We can restructure the query a little bit, and it should work. I think we're over time already. I imagine you might have to hop off and whatnot. But so we can end here. I think he gets us fairly close. We might need to do a part 2 and pick this up. But I hope folks watching kind of get where we're going with this, right? We're taking Next and we're saying, hey, Next, WordPress, you both have opinions on how routing and stuff should work. Let's kind of meet in the middle, agree on what a permalink is, resolve that. If I go change my URL structure in WordPress, Next is going to respect that. You can install plugins that have custom post types with different URL structures, and it's going to resolve just like it would in a normal non-headless WordPress site. So we get the benefit of using React, component-based development, all sorts of cool stuff like that, but also get a benefit from using the CMS for what it's meant to do. So,
well, and I just pasted in links to the repository that we've been working on, as well as the commit ID. I forgot to do it as a PR, so it's a commit ID that shows. It still shows the change set and the diff that we did, but it shows everything that we worked through, which is probably going to be large because we turned pages into pages.old, but hopefully you can parse through it.
So yeah, I think we'll chat and probably schedule a part 2 to this and keep working on it. But thanks for joining, and
yeah, thanks for having me.
Hope everybody watching got something out of this. I know I did. So.
Awesome. Thanks everybody.
All right. See y'all.